And now, let's join ace broadcaster Mamode Akugha as he takes us inside the Niger Delta.
Hello out there and welcome to the program. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. I'm your regular host, Mamode Akugha. Our lead stories in today's package are centered on efforts made by government and private investors to curb the deadly coronavirus disease and ease harsh economic impacts of COVID-19 lockdown on vulnerable communities in the Niger Delta. We will, in the course of the program, bring you a special report on the people's expectations from their governors as oil prices continue to drop in the international market following the COVID-19 lockdown policies of governments across the globe. And finally, in today's package, we'll bring you the people's reaction to the recent tenure elongation of the Interim Management Committee of the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) by President Muhammadu Buhari. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region will be back in just a moment. Don't go away.
Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, determined to make a difference.
Introducing the new face of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA. We are charting the direction for our maritime and regulating the industry for a better, bigger, and more economically stable Nigeria. Evolved to serve you better. We are NIMASA. New face, rejuvenated service. NIMASA, changing the tides in your favor.
Welcome back. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. The federal government has restated its commitment to combat COVID-19, which is on the increase across the country, as well as other infectious diseases. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timipre Silva, made this known at the groundbreaking and foundation-laying ceremony for construction of an emergency and infectious disease hospital recently in Yenagoa, the BAYELSA state capital. Correspondent Lovely Ofigo has the report.
At the groundbreaking and foundation-laying ceremony for the construction of an emergency and infectious diseases center in Yenagoa, Timipre Silva noted that the initiative was in line with the federal government's determination to effectively combat the novel coronavirus disease. He said the project was kick-started in Bayelsa State in recognition of the state's immense contribution to Nigeria's crude oil output.
It is the state that accounts for almost 40% of the nation's total onshore oil production. Indeed, nowhere deserves to be selected as the first state to kickstart the most important category of this important intervention initiative than the glory of all lands.
When completed, the multi-billion naira medical infrastructure project, undertaken in partnership with an oil major operating in the Niger Delta, will serve to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and other deadly diseases in the Niger Delta. For Governor Doye Diri, the initiative was a huge relief for Bayelsa State, coming at a time the state government was battling to keep the deadly coronavirus disease at bay.
The significant measure and magnitude of this project are self-evident. That it is more about consolidating and improving the health of our people and the health of our communities.
The proposed health facility is expected to contain the spread of infectious diseases and deal effectively with emergency situations in Bayelsa State and the entire South-South geopolitical zone.
Inside the Niger Delta.
One of the fastest growing retail outlets in Port Harcourt, the River State capital, Matori's Supermart, has donated food items worth millions of naira to its host communities in ONOWAKPO local government area of River State in a bid to cushion the adverse effects of COVID-19 lockdown on ordinary citizens. Management of the retail outlet says the donation was in recognition of the accommodating disposition of its host communities since it began operation in the area.
All over the country, citizens have had to grapple with a harsh economy attendant on the nationwide COVID-19 lockdown. It was to bring succor to its host communities of Eligbolo and Eleozu in Obiakpo local government area of Rivers State that the management of Matori's Supermart recently donated assorted food items to the less privileged.
We are thanking Matori's and his management for the food brought for us, and also want to use this medium to advise other company and this business firm in our community to please emulate from Matori's.
Why God gives us wealth is for us to bless others, and He has shown good example to the world. Not even Rivers State as a whole, He has shown good example, and I pray that God who has given him this heart of giving must continue to replenish his pot.
In appreciation of the goodwill extended by management of Matori's Supermart, host communities of the retail outlet promised to continue to provide a conducive atmosphere for its operations.
Since this COVID-19 began, I think Matori's Supermarket is the first company who has shown mercy to its host community.
The Eligbolo community will continue to show a harmonious business and safe environment relationship with Matori's.
Management of the retail outlet explained that the donation of food items was made in a trying period to appreciate the goodwill it has enjoyed from its host communities since it began operations in the area some 8 years ago.
The ownership of Matori's Supermarket and the board of directors felt, let's give something back to these persons. Let's give them a support. Let it not be whittled down to only government source alone. And that is what inspired this.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Well, we say a big thank you to Matori's Supermart in Rivers State for its display of good corporate citizenship. In these COVID-19 times, when a lot of people have lost their means of livelihood, we must say thank you to organizations and individuals who are reaching out to those in need. In Delta State, Lagos-based fashion designer and creative director of MUDI Africa, Mr. Mudiaga Enajimo, doled out the much-needed palliatives to his people in Ughelli, Delta State. The gifts, which were mostly for the elderly, was to ensure that their hard work and labor for their children were not forgotten at this time when they are in need. And for the Isoko people, also of Delta State, it was indeed a windfall when their beloved son and political leader, Joel ONOWAKPO, sent home palliatives to cushion the effects of the COVID-19 lockdown in Delta State. The relief materials, which included 4,000 bags of rice, 4,000 bags of beans, gallons of cooking oil, tissue paper, and other food items. The relief materials, which were received by the chairman of the 2 local governments of the Isoko Nation, will be distributed to the clans in Isoko Kingdom.
Inside the Niger Delta.
And now moving on. Governors of Nigeria's oil-producing states have been enjoined to convene an emergency meeting on how to deal with an imminent economic crisis occasioned by the current oil price plunge in the international market. This follows widespread fears about a likely halt in oil production as the global COVID-19 shutdown continues to obliterate demand for the black gold. Correspondent Chika Bodozie tells us more.
In the last few weeks, the price of Nigeria's Brent crude has hovered between $30 and $20 per barrel, which is a further decline from its market value of $45 per barrel when global demand for fossil fuels witnessed a sudden crash earlier this year. The unprecedented decline in the price of crude oil is occasioned by the coronavirus-induced lockdowns that have grounded industrial and economic activities worldwide. According to global energy experts, countries like Nigeria that are heavily dependent on crude oil
for their economic survival, will have to brace up for hard times in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. The economic uncertainties surrounding the worst ever oil price crash in recent history appear quite gloomy for Nigeria, which depends on crude oil sales for about 60% of its revenues and 90% of its foreign exchange earnings. In March this year, Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Malam Melekiari, painted a gloomy picture of the Nigerian economy when he hinted that the country had been unable to sell about 50 cargoes of crude oil on the account of the global COVID-19 lockdown. Owing to lack of motivation for continued oil production, speculations are rife in some quarters that the country may have no other option than to halt production if the COVID-19 pandemic persists. With limited funds at their disposal, the federal and state governments would find it increasingly difficult to fund their budgets. This would immediately impact negatively on the Nigerian economy, leaving the ordinary citizens at the receiving end of an imminent economic meltdown. Perhaps the country's oil-producing states that are almost entirely dependent on 13% oil derivation funds for their survival would turn out to be the worst victims of the current global oil glut.
The Niger Delta economies are going to be most impacted because other parts of the country are slightly diversified when it has to do with other areas like agriculture, even if they've not scratched the surface. But it's even worse off for that of the Niger Delta because we've not really started agriculture.
In addition to crude oil and gas, littoral states of the Niger Delta are naturally endowed with resources that can easily be exploited to promote tourism and agriculture. In 2010, governors of the region's oil-producing states established a regional economic bloc under the BAYELSA Commission. It was an ambitious plan designed to utilize the comparative advantages of individual states for economic cooperation in power generation, transport, agriculture, infrastructure development, and industrialization. Several years after their predecessors in office abandoned the regional economic development agenda on account of political differences, incumbent governors in the South-South geopolitical zone met recently in Asaba to restart the BAYELSA Commission.
BAYELSA Commission can actually help. The concept was to ensure the infrastructural development of the region, so as to ensure that it can help to attract so many things in, that is the region beyond oil. A lot of industries of different types, manufacturing, processing, export, and so many other industries should be established at this point in time. If that is done, it's going to reduce this dependence on oil. Apart from industry, you still have agriculture.
The Niger Delta governors had to sit up, and instead of working separately and challenging themselves and competing among themselves, they should really come together and begin to talk together as one person. If not, they will perish as common enemies.
The need for governors in the Niger Delta to act fast and shield their states from an imminent economic crisis cannot be overemphasized. Between 2017 and 2019, long before the coronavirus-induced crash in the price of crude oil, the National Bureau of Statistics had designated Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, and Rivers State as states with the highest unemployment rates in the country. In transforming the regional economic landscape for the common good of the largely backward oil-producing communities, the governors are advised to invest in agriculture.
Agriculture is the way to go. Investing in agriculture, agriculture is the only catalyst that could drive as much employment in our society today because of the potentials around it. The agricultural value chain is so much that it can mop up all the youths we have in our society.
In calling for increased investment in agriculture, Niger Deltans draw copious inspiration from the Cross River State experience. The loss of 76 offshore oil wells to Akwa Ibom State and the ceding of the oil-rich Bakassi Peninsula to Cameroon in 2002 has shattered the economy of Cross River State. Undaunted by its declining economic fortunes, the state immediately embraced tourism and agriculture, which is now its economic mainstay.
Cross River is guaranteeing the country that we will be there and available to provide all the seedlings that we require in this country. Today we are supplying 17 states, but our capacity to take care of the entire state, it was actually installed and designed to take care of West African demand. So I'm sure that Cross River is fully prepared to deal with the issue of the post-pandemic crisis, which is hunger, which is loss of jobs, which is dislocation of the social fiber of society.
With the Cross River State experience, most Niger Deltans are convinced that crude oil has done more harm than good to the regional economy.
The crude oil is not a resource you should depend on. It has damaged our ecosystem. It has damaged our aquaculture. It has damaged so many farmlands. It has brought strange diseases through gas flaring. It has damaged our roofs. There's no roof that can last 3 years without being darkened, blackened, and holes dug into it. It has damaged our water system. We used to drink from the streams. Even the one you fetch outside, you look at it within 1 hour, it's black soot. It has damaged our ability to even wear white. I have more than 200 sins of crude oil. It has damaged our psychology. No wonder a famous scholar described crude oil as the devil's excreta, because wherever it visits is disaster.
With an unprecedented decline in global demand for crude, the rainy days are already upon Africa's largest oil-producing country, which currently finds itself in a catch-22 situation. In the Niger Delta, where commercial and industrial activities have been at their lowest ebb for decades, the future appears even more bleak. The implication is that governors of Nigeria's oil-producing states will have to put on their thinking caps to devise creative means of transforming the region to survive a post-oil economy. In doing so, they should realize that delayed action portends more calamity for the region's economy. Hence, the need for an immediate economic plan of action for Nigeria's Niger Delta region.
Inside the Niger Delta.
President Muhammadu Buhari last week extended the tenure of the Professor Keme Bradikuma Ponde-led Interim Management Committee of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, from 1st of May to 31st December 2020. In their reaction, some Niger Delta youths have endorsed Mr. President's action, which they believe will lay to rest as sinister media propaganda against the Professor Ponde-led interim management of the NDDC and the ongoing forensic audit of the Commission. Correspondent Ekena Mefuri has details.
In their attempt to discredit ongoing forensic audit of the NDDC, advocates of the status quo in an ailing commission had launched ferocious media attacks on Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and the current Interim Management Committee led by Professor Ponde. Their strategy was to commission paid writers to vilify officials appointed to supervise the forensic audit process and kick them out of office.
Nobody will stop the IMC from achieving the set result. At the end of the day, a forensic audit report will come out that will vindicate those who have done well and again prosecute those who haven't done well. And so it will be left for the Nigerian people to judge the IMC after that point. It's premature at this point in time to take on a group of people who have come to rectify a wrong that's been done over time.
To the delight of change agents in the Niger Delta, President Buhari recently extended the tenure of the NDDC Interim Management Committee from 1st of May to December 31, 2020. Mr. President's action is generally viewed in the Niger Delta as an affirmation of his confidence in the Interim Management Committee of the NDDC and its supervising minister, Godswill Akpabio.
I believe that the Niger Delta is on course. I understand there is a lot of jubilation on the streets of Port Harcourt and even in the offices of the NDDC. And the Niger Delta Development Commission is equally passing through a phase. So first, let me appreciate Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, for giving us the responsibility of supervising and overlooking and at least giving direction and guiding the affairs of the Niger Delta Development Commission. It is my determination to ensure that Mr. President's vision for the Niger Delta is realized in these few years remaining, and we are in a hurry.
Most Niger Deltans are convinced that those trying to stop the forensic audit of the NDDC are only trying to cover their tracks.
Some directors, some heavy politicians who have war chest don't want that forensic audit to complete because some of them may have eaten the money and they don't know how to vomit it. So they do everything under their powers to make sure that it does not exist.
People are paying them to do this. Why? Brother pay brother to condemn brother. What will you benefit from? And I really advise our people, we Niger Deltas, we have a problem. Why are we selling ourselves? Are we not tired of betraying ourselves?
Contrary to misleading assumptions about the intention of the NDDC forensic audit by some jittery elements who are already preempting its outcome, President Buhari ordered the NDDC probe in September last year after giving a serious thought to what had become of a commission established to offer long-suffering communities a new lease of life in the Niger Delta. In its November 2019 report, the International Center for Investigative Reporting ICIR alleged that the NDDC was ineffective, corrupt, and opaque in its activities. According to the ICIR, the NDDC failed to impact on the Niger Delta after receiving about 1.5 trillion naira between 2001 and 2016 to transform the region. Earlier, the Steve Orosanye-led presidential panel set up in September 2011 to investigate the NDDC had observed that the commission was a cesspool of corruption. Consequently, it had recommended an immediate suspension of the board as well as compulsory retirement of executive management staff who should be replaced by an interim management committee. The Orosanye panel further recommended that the envisaged interim management committee be mandated to conduct a physical inventory and evaluation of projects to ascertain outstanding liabilities of contractors to the commission. Curiously, there was no meaningful attempt to liberate the NDDC from the siege of looters until the government of President Buhari summoned the political will to sanitize the commission.
Those people are finishers. So they should probe from the beginning, that is the first MD to the last acting MD. NDDC has not done well for Niger Delta people. They failed Niger Delta completely. Giving the money, the contract to their friends, they share it. One senator will take the contract and sell to another person, another man will take and sell to another person. At the end of the day, those projects will fail. So any of them found guilty should be jailed.
In furtherance of the ongoing reforms in the NDDC and to ensure a seamless process in the ongoing forensic audit of the NDDC, no fewer than 30 directors have been redeployed from the Commission's corporate headquarters in Port Harcourt to its state offices.
Those directors and key government officials in NDDC who are living above their means, their known means of income, should be able to account for how they were able to raise those funds. The reasons is very clear. NDDC, for your file to move from table A to table B, you must know somebody. You must talk to somebody. Business cannot be done in that way.
By transferring most of the directors, it will give the present IMC the power to do some things. We want to know how many companies, who are the owners of those companies, names, how much are involved, how many companies have completed their jobs, how many have the NDDC not paid, how many have been paid and have refused not to do it, who are these persons. We heard stories sometimes that a certain senator got about 300 jobs and 200 was paid for. We didn't see the project. We want to know who is that person. How many of them? That's what we want to know. We don't know the politics they're playing in NDDC. We want to know them. And I believe these people have the guts to do it.
Recently, the Professor Pondey-led Interim Management Committee handed over some 8,000 verified projects across the Niger Delta to lead consultants of the ongoing forensic audits for close examination to determine their status. The commencement of the NDDC forensic audit is indeed an ominous sign for plunderers of the Commission who tried to no avail to discredit the ongoing reforms as well as officials appointed to supervise its process. It is indeed payback time for beneficiaries of monumental corruption that has left the NDDC incapacitated to deliver on its mandates as an intervention agency. And for the largely underdeveloped communities in the Niger Delta, the move to sanitize the NDDC is most welcome, as it would reposition the Commission to begin to focus on the troubling issues in the Niger Delta that necessitated its establishment through an Act of Parliament in the year 2000.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Well, with that report, we draw the curtain on the program. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region, will be back same time, same station next week. Until then, you can follow us on our social media handles showing right now on your screen. Until next week, remember to always wash your hands properly, maintain proper hygiene, and keep safe social distance to avoid spreading the COVID-19 disease. My name is Mamode Akugha. Thank you all so much for watching, and bye for now.